from there. So first of all, welcome everyone to our first parent support workshop of 2025. This year we'll be doing monthly workshops. We'll have all different guests on all different topics. So we are excited about that. And today we have Carrie Durward. Did I say that right, Carrie?
That is exactly correct.
Oh, fabulous. And she'll be talking about family meal planning, weaving in a bit about picky eaters and all of that. I've watched her present before and she's great, lots of great information. So I'm excited, Carrie, specifically for my own personal self as well.
Oh,
So, and
great.
I'll be recording this as well, if that's okay with you.
That sounds great.
All right, so you can take it away. Actually, first let me read your bio for you.
Oh, sure.
So Carrie is a faculty member in the Nutrition, Dietetics, and Food Science Department at USU, and also the USU Extension Nutrition Specialist. She's a registered dietitian and studied at Arizona State University for her bachelor's degree and the Pennsylvania State University for her PhD and dietetic internship. Her work is focused on food recovery, access to health promoting foods, and diabetes education. When she isn't working, she loves to be outside with her two small children, try out new recipes, work in her garden, and play with fabric and fibers. So welcome, Carrie.
Thank you so much for having me. I am looking for the chat. There we go. I want to make sure I can see the chat.
Yeah, and I'll keep an eye on it for you as well.
Oh, thanks so much, Megan. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Well, thank you so much for the invitation to be here, Megan. I love to talk to people about nutrition, and actually, meal planning and picky eating are two of my favorite topics. So I was very excited when I got this invitation. Before we jump into my content, I want to know a little bit about who is here and listening so that I can help make the content a little bit more personalized. So the first thing that I want to know is what are the ages of your children if you have them? So I don't know if people want to speak up, if they want to drop it in the chat. But I would love to hear from as many people as possible. Okay, we've got 15 and 7, 8, 2, 10. Okay, 4 and 6. And so Megan, is anyone, since this is like the parenting support, Elizabeth, okay, there we go. At least one where it's just adults. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it's for anyone that has children in their lives that they support. So open to
Okay.
any and everyone. Yep.
8 month. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we really have the spectrum. We have infants all the way up to older teenagers, almost adults. And then we do have some grandparents and some other people who have children in their lives, even if they're not in their households. Great, good to know. Okay, how many people struggle with picky eating in your household? And this might be your children, it might be your partner, it might be yourself. Okay. All right, so I'm getting a bunch of yeses, which lets me know that that is something that we want to talk about. Oh, Brittany, I'm so sorry. It is so stressful when every mealtime is a fight. I completely understand what you're going through. So at home, I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we definitely have gone through some interesting times as I transitioned from theoretical knowledge about how to deal with picky eating to practical hands-on knowledge. So hopefully I'll have some good information that will help you guys out today. So the first thing that I always want to talk about as a dietitian, as a nutrition scientist, I don't think this was mentioned as one of our goals with our meal planning, but one of my goals with meal planning is always to try to get myself to a healthier diet. And so what I mean when I say a healthier diet is a well-balanced diet that includes a variety of foods. My It's a really simple and easy way to make sure you're getting a variety of foods in your diet and getting all of the nutrients that you need. One thing that I always want to point out about my plate is, the cup does say dairy, um, but it's dairy or a calcium fortified non-dairy alternative or other high calcium foods, really. Now, is everybody pretty familiar with my plate? Have you guys seen this before?
Just taking a quick break to remind you that we will continue this parent support workshop series throughout 2025, meeting on the fourth Tuesday of the month from 12 to 1. We hope you'll join us each month as we continue to connect, grow, and find the support you need as a working parent. See you next month.
So this is the image that I wanted to show you guys, and I wanted to talk about a little bit about what do we mean by healthy eating? What are we trying to get to when we are doing our meal planning? In addition to saving time, money, and hopefully helping us deal with our picky eaters. So um, I think I saw some people saying that they were familiar with my plate and others that were not. So just really briefly, my plate is what the USDA now uses to help Americans follow the dietary guidelines for Americans. So we don't have the pyramid anymore. Now we have my plate. And so you'll observe a few different things about my plate. One of the things is on the left-hand side of the plate, an entire half of the plate, our goal is to make it fruits and vegetables. You'll also notice that the fruits is like a little less than a quarter of the plate, the vegetables is a little bit more. And then on the other side, we have greens and protein, again, taking up about half of the plate, the greens a bit more, the protein a bit less. And then for our beverage, we have either dairy or a non-caloric drink of some other sort is what's encouraged. But the dairy, like I was saying, it doesn't have to be cow's milk dairy. Basically, they are wanting you to get a good source of calcium. As well as some other important nutrients like vitamin D from the dairy. And so if you choose not to, or if you can't eat dairy, you just have to kind of mentally do the switch to a fortified non-dairy beverage, or my other foods that I eat that are high in calcium. Any questions about my plate before we move on to the next slide? All right. So please feel free to speak up at any point or drop anything in the chat if questions come up. Kirsten, can we have the next slide, please? Oh, were there any slides between those?
Not that I'm seeing. There's just that what is healthy and then the activity. Is that the one you're wanting?
Oh, that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's start with the activity and then we'll come back here. Okay. So, okay, so the first thing that I want you guys to start out with, just to get you guys thinking and involved, so it's not just me talking at you, is I want you guys to pull out a piece of paper, the notes app on your phone, your brain if you're really good at remembering, and make a list of favorite foods. For those of you who have picky eaters at home or selective eaters, you may have heard this referred to as safe foods. And what I mean is that these should be foods that if you serve them to your picky eater, you can be pretty sure that they're going to eat them probably more than half of the time. And if you are not dealing with picky eaters in your household, or even if you are, feel free to think about favorite foods that are your child's, your partner's, your own favorite foods. And the reason why I'm asking you guys to do this is, my philosophy when it comes to nutrition is start with what you like and then add on what you need to make that a balanced meal or a balanced snack or whatever we're talking about. And so let's just spend the next 2 to 3 minutes working on this list. I still have my plate up there because I would encourage you to, once you get through the first few that pop in your head, think about each of the food groups and think about like, is there a safe food for my picky eater in each of these groups? Or is there a favorite food that I have within these groups? Or does my partner have a favorite food? All right, ready, set, go. Okay, take the next 30 seconds to kind of finish up your thinking, jot down a few things. You won't have a comprehensive list by now, and that's fine. All right, how did that activity go for everyone? How many foods were you able to think up in that amount of time? Did they, were you able to think up fruits and vegetables or just typical? Oh, thanks, Kirsten, throwing hers in the chat. Kids say foods. Green beans, quinoa, spaghetti, broccoli, chicken nuggets, French fries, plain chicken, white rice, beef tacos, chili, cucumber, and grape tomatoes. Love it. Yeah, and what's really interesting is, the more you talk to other parents of picky eaters, there's often foods in common, like chicken nuggets, but the rest of the foods can be very highly specific to individual children. And so I don't necessarily expect everybody's list to be the same. Anybody else willing to share, or you don't have to share your exact list. Just talk about how it went. All right, that's totally fine. Rachel said she found about 8-ish items. One of the things I realized as I started doing it is that I kind of have two lists. One for my 2-year-old and one for my 5-year-old, right? And there are some items that cross the list, but they're not all the same. Brittany says that she has all fruits and veggies that her kids will eat, but she struggles to get any meat in. Me too, Brittany. I'm not sure what's going on there. Heidi, I feel like as soon as I find a food my child will eat, my child will no longer eat those items. Yeah, and Rachel totally agrees. Yep, Megan agrees. I agree too. Yep. I definitely experience that with my kids where they go through phases. They're all in on something, that's all they want to eat constantly, and then I buy a bunch of it and suddenly they do not want it ever again. Don't give it to me, right? So, I don't have a lot of tips for you on that other than thinking of it kind of as a positive. right? So we want to eat a variety of foods to get all of the nutrients that we need. So even if our kids are like all in on one food or just a couple foods, at least we know it's going to switch in a little bit and they will get their variety over time, even if they're not getting it within the same day. Yeah, Kirsten, or they only want the expensive thing, like berries. Yes, my 5-year-old actually was never interested in berries. And so I never understood these parents who are like, oh my gosh, my berry budget. And my 2-year-old loves them. And now I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. I understand. All right, so this can be a really helpful activity to do over kind of a longer period of time when you have more time to think through it and think of all of the safe foods because starting with that list in hand is going to be one of our first steps when we do meal planning. So then I also just wanted to let you know that USDA has a lot of different tools out there that you can use to help implement My Plate in your family's life. They have some great resources about shopping and saving. They have some different apps and quizzes and things like that that you can do. And then they also have some good content on meal planning, some of which I'll link to at the end, but this QR code will just take you to their page. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware that those resources are out there. Next slide, please, Kirsten. Okay, so one of the reasons why we do meal planning is because we want to try to cook and eat more meals at home. So I think most people these days realize that there are benefits to cooking at home. For example, it's typically less expensive, it's typically healthier food. And then research has really shown a very strong association between eating more meals at home and our health outcomes, both physical and mental, intellectual for our kids, behavioral for our kids as well. And so, you know, everybody knows that it's something we should do more of. So what are some of the reasons that we don't do more of it? And this can be yourself, it can be things that you observe about other people. Feel free to, oh, Yolanda, time and taste, great. Yeah, feel free to type in the chat or unmute and speak up if you want to. Convenience, yep. Overwhelmed. Yeah, it seems pretty overwhelming. Yep, convenience. Yeah, so the reality of being a parent in America these days is that we do have a huge amount of things on our plate. And so starting from scratch and cooking meals every single night of the week can seem super overwhelming. And don't worry, I'm not going to tell you that you have to do that or like your kid's not going to be healthy. That's not the message that we're sending here at all. Convenience, yeah. Yep. So I am definitely a fan of shortcuts, of places to save time, convenience, stuff like that. Money, sometimes it's cheaper to swing by Wendy's or McDonald's to feed 3 toddler mouths. Yeah, Kirsten, that's really interesting because there's been a lot of really interesting research looking at the costs of home cooking versus fast food. And it really depends on what you put into the calculation. And one of the things that we are often even shorter on than money is time. And when you put time into the calculation, the fast food is definitely cheaper. If you don't include time, then there are definitely meals that you can make at home that are less expensive. And so, but it's figuring out kind of the sweet spot between meals that fit our budgets, fit our time budgets, and are something that our kids will eat. So let's keep talking about that. Next slide, please, Kirsten. Okay, so one of the great things I put up a slide about barriers and I say it's a great thing. One of the great, but literally this is a great thing for somebody like me who has the goals of helping people improve their nutrition, is that a lot of the barriers that we have to home food preparation are the same barriers that we have to eating healthy. So time, convenience, lack of skill. It is really frustrating to spend the time cooking a meal and then your child doesn't touch it. Yes, completely agree. And then different food preferences than my husband, and the foods that I like aren't good for him due to medical issues. So she cooks for him and then fast food for her. Okay. Really great input, you guys. I appreciate that. Next slide, please, Kirsten. So what's great is that meal planning can help with quite a few of these barriers. So time, convenience, sorry, previous slide. So time and convenience, lack of ideas, as well as cost on the barriers to eating healthy. And then hopefully we can address two of the others, the lack of skill and the preference, kind of slowly over time, using meal planning as a tool to get there. Next slide, please. Okay, so meal planning can seem like just one more thing to add to your list, right? Like, I already don't have time to cook at home. How am I going to carve out time to do meal planning every week? And the thing that I'm hoping to convince you of today is that meal planning seems like something that you have to find time for, but in the long run, it will actually save you time and money. So if we think about what we need, what we're going to eat throughout the week, or you could even do a couple weeks in a row, then we have a plan when we're going to the grocery store. And grocery shopping takes less time. Grocery shopping takes less money because we're only buying the things that we need for our meals and our snacks that week. We also save time when it comes time to cook dinner because we don't have to think about, okay, what am I going to cook? What do I have on hand? What can I make with this random assortment of ingredients that I have on hand? It's also less stressful for those same reasons. It can really help us make successful dietary changes. And so whether that's you trying to make changes for your own health and well-being, or trying to change our picky eaters into slightly less picky eaters, we are going to have more success if we spend some time meal planning. And then the research really just shows when we implement meal planning, we have improved dietary quality for everybody in our household. All right, so what do I mean by meal planning? I mean something like what you see here. This one is pretty extensive. It is a weekly meal plan that has breakfast, lunch, dinner, as well as snacks. But having some sort of grid like this with the days of the week, usually if you're just starting out meal planning, if you haven't done it before, I usually encourage people to just start with dinner. How many people have tried meal planning before? Is it something that you're already doing? Is it something that you tried, but you stopped because it wasn't working for you or your family? Yolanda, me. You tried and you stopped, or you were already doing it? Erica, on and off. Gave up pretty quickly, just hard to follow through, inconsistent. Yep, it works sometimes, but not others. On and off, depending on kids' activities. Okay. All right, so I'd love to hear from those of you that like it works sometimes, or I got tired of the same meals. Okay, got tired of the same meals too frequently. I'd love to hear more about reasons why it didn't work. So I hear kids' activities, I hear lack of variety. Let's see. Oh, Kirsten, thanks for the link. I'll check out this tool. Ashley, I can't come up with ideas. Love it. I mean, I don't love it, but thank you for sharing. I love your share. Too much time to prepare the menu. Okay. plans change or we run short of time and then don't follow the plan, then I have groceries that I don't use. Okay. Groceries have become so expensive. I'm searching for cheaper meal options. I mean, eggs. Yes. Okay. Great. Okay. All right. So I don't know that I can, I have half-heartedly tried, gave up pretty quickly, just hard to follow through. Okay. All right. So, as when we're doing any behavior change, would encourage you guys to start small and kind of build on there. I am going to talk about several things to kind of address some of the barriers or concerns that you guys came up with. If you think of other reasons why, like, oh, this isn't going to work for me because blah, blah, blah. I'd love it if you would put that in the chat, because I do want to not just talk about, how to meal plan for those of you who haven't done it before, but I also want to talk about ways to succeed at meal planning. All right, next slide, please, Kirsten. Sorry, Kirsten. Oh, okay.
Is there
So,
lag? Did it scroll down? Okay.
Yep, it did. Okay, so I like you guys to think about 3 different steps in meal planning. The first one is to take inventory, go look at what you have on hand. The second one is to choose meals. And the third one is to create a grocery list. Okay, can you scroll to the next page, please? Okay, so the first and one of the most important steps to do is to take inventory. You want to look in your fridge, you want to look in your freezer, you want to look in your cabinets and pantry and any place else that you might have ingredients. This is going to take you a lot longer the first time you do it, especially if you have a full pantry like this one or a full freezer. But it is a really good way to save on groceries. So by using up what we have in the house before it goes bad, we can save a lot of money on ingredients. Okay, Elizabeth says, I can make a meal plan, buy the food, and then I make 1 or 2 of the meals, and then I just run out of energy after work. Best intentions, and then don't follow through. Okay, so kind of time and convenience. Okay. All right. So we want to think about what needs to be used soon. And then the other thing that I like to do is, like, even when I'm doing my inventory, I like to have like a little piece of scratch paper that I'm like scribbling down ingredients. And I like to start thinking, like, I let my brain start thinking about, like, what could I make with these ingredients while I'm doing the inventory. So, if something pops into your head, you just note it down on your piece of scratch paper or your note or your voice memo, whatever you're using. Voice memo or talk to text can be a really effective way to do an inventory, just because then you don't have to be stopping and writing things down. Next slide, please. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about with the inventory is whether or not the food is still good. So a huge misconception in the United States is that the dates on our food are like safety dates, and once it's expired, that you just need to toss it. And that's absolutely not the truth. The dates on our food have nothing to do with whether the food is safe or not. So in general, if you want to learn more about what all the different dates mean, I've got a link at the bottom of the page there to an article that I wrote about it. But in general, the dates are to tell the store when to sell the food or when it's going to be at its best quality. So past those dates, the food might not be as high of quality. It might not taste quite as good. It might not have quite as nice of color, for example, but it is still safe to eat. So how do we know if food isn't safe? We need to look for signs of spoilage. We want to look for changes to odor, texture, or flavor. And then I've also linked out to a USDA app called the Food Keeper app. which can also tell you how long food will stay good. It's a little bit conservative, but it's a good rule of thumb. Another big one to think about is leftovers. They are good for 3 to 4 days in the fridge. I encourage you to invest in a roll of painter's tape and a Sharpie that you just keep on top of your refrigerator or in a drawer next to your refrigerator or with the Tupperware, wherever it makes sense for you and your family, and just put a piece of tape on there and put the date on it so that you know how long that thing has been in the refrigerator. Some people also find it very helpful to have a whiteboard on the front of the refrigerator where you write down leftovers and the date so that you remember that you have them to eat. The other thing is that a lot of people struggle with maybe not wanting to eat that same thing again within 3 to 4 days. And the great news is a lot of foods can be frozen and reheated. And I would just encourage you guys to try to make it a habit to realistically think about, am I going to eat this in the next 3 to 4 days? Like, am I a kind of person who takes leftovers for lunch, or am I the kind of person who ends up throwing out my leftovers because they sit in the fridge for 7 days because I don't want to eat them again? And if you're the second kind of person, freeze it immediately, and then it will be ready for, you know, to add to a meal or to start a meal, or, you know, depending on how much you have left when you're running short on time in the future. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next thing to do, so once you've got your grid, the next thing to do is to choose your meals. So I highly recommend keeping a list of go-to recipes. You can organize your recipes in a lot of different ways. You can, you know, have printouts, you can write them on note cards, there's a bunch of apps online, you can use a Pinterest board, you can save reels from Facebook or TikTok, though I honestly don't think I've gone back to very many reels that I've saved. So that, you know, you have to find a method of organizing the recipes in a way that works for you. And the list of recipes is really important to address a few different concerns that you guys brought up with meal planning. One is the lack of variety, getting bored of the same meals over and over again. And the second is having a hard time coming up with like what to put for the week. So one of the ways you can come up with what to put for the week is by going to your list of recipes. And I actually like to sort my recipes into 2 piles. I'm definitely a paper person. I have my go-to recipes that are like tried and true. These are things that I've made over and over again. They may or may not be things that my kids will currently eat, but they are the recipes that I know that I like, my partner likes, and we're good to go with those. And then I also have a pile of recipes that are things that I want to try. And so, you know, as I'm getting bored of, you know, the foods that we've been rotating, I will mix in 1 or maybe 2 new meals to try in a week. And that adds variety. And it also allows me to expand my go-to tried and true recipes list. Kirsten put a really great note in the comments about scheduling your entire week and needing to think about how much time she needs to how much time she has to be successful. Yeah, great comments. I was going to get into a lot of that in just a little bit, but the really great information there. A recipe managing app called Umami that helps you meal plan and generate grocery lists. Easily saves me an hour every week when I meal plan. I'm going to have to try that one. I'm going to write that down. Samsung Foods app that allows me to save recipes I find online in one place. Yeah, a lot of people are finding apps that work for them. And I think that that's really awesome. Any tool that we can find that saves us time or helps us organize things, I think is really helpful. The other things that we can do to help us think about what to make for the week and potentially to add in some variety are to think about what you have on hand and what needs to be used soon. And also look at sales, or think about what produce is in season. So if instead of just being like, okay, we're going to do the same recipes that we always do, if I look at the sales and I see that, chicken is on sale and I have a recipe that I usually make with pork, maybe I might want to think about swapping it up and changing it up. And the same thing with vegetables, right? Like if I'm making a soup or a stir fry that calls for certain vegetables, but other ones are on sale. If I'm somewhat flexible in my cooking brain, then that allows me to kind of modify the recipes and get some variety even with using the same recipes. Next page, please, Kirsten. Okay. So we kind of did this earlier when we thought about our our favorite foods, but expanding it beyond just a favorite food, like I have bananas, for example, on my list, but to think of like either a main dish or like a full meal that can be a go-to meal. Um, and I do want you to consider things that will fit your lifestyle. Um, I also want you to consider things that you or your family actually like. So I want you to try to think of 5 of these. But honestly, for those of you who like have given us so somebody said that like her plans change. Somebody said that she has the best intentions. She'll plan 5 meals. She's going to cook all the meals that week, and then she gets burnt out after 1 or 2. And what I would suggest to you guys is don't start out trying to plan all of the menu for the week. Maybe you only plan 2 or 3 meals because you know that that's what you're actually going to be able to cook and eat at home, right? And stick to however you're currently feeding your family for the other days of the week. And that starting slow like that might be more sustainable. And once you feel like you really get the hang of that, then you can come back and say, okay, do I want to try to do this for more of the days of the week? It's also perfectly acceptable to have one of those days of the week and put leftovers or put order pizza or put, McDonald's is that day. And I would also encourage you to think about like, okay, what could I add to that, right? So like the kids' meals these days are better at McDonald's. You typically will get some of the, it's not just carbs and protein, like there are other parts of the food group that are there. But like, for example, one of the things that I try to do, I don't always get to it, but if I'm exhausted and we're just ordering pizza, I try to think about, okay, what can I add to this meal to make it a more balanced meal, right? And so maybe I'll pull some oranges out of the fridge and we'll also have orange slices or grapes or, fruit that we have on hand. Maybe I'll try to pull some a bag of frozen peas out of the freezer and microwave it and serve that with salt and butter. And so then now we have a fruit and a vegetable on our plate to go along with the protein and the carbs from the pizza. So thinking about, these convenience foods, the takeout or the fast food, how can we start with what's working for us and our family? And then are there easy things that we could add to it to get closer to where we want to be with the well-balanced meal? Okay, I will stop talking now. Let's take 2 minutes to try to think of 5 go-to meals. And you can definitely pull from your favorite food lists. That's a good place to start. And go. All right, take the next 30 seconds to kind of wrap up if you're thinking about things. All righty. Kirsten's got spaghetti with veggies and ranch. Oh, the ranch is for the veggies, not the spaghetti.
Yes,
I was like, oh,
correct.
interesting. Ranch spaghetti. No, it's tomato sauce spaghetti and then veggies and ranch. Okay, thanks. Tacos, black bean soup, chicken or fish, quinoa and green beans, and crock pot barbecue chicken with salad. Um, Yep. Yep. So thinking about the week and what your schedule is super important. So that can be another really great way to organize your recipes. If your app allows you to like put them in different folders, or if you have piles like me, I definitely have like a section that's like super fast recipes, right? Like dump and go the morning of, or ham fried rice. You can sneak a lot of veggies and ham in it. Oh, that sounds really good, Brittany. Salad, nuts, quesadilla with corn tortilla. Okay, I went to my safe foods and I have 3 kinds of pasta plus pizza on my go-to meals list. So, yeah, that's where we're at in my family. But okay, so now that we have our 5 go-to meals, next slide, please. Okay, so the next step is to choose our meals. And like I showed you earlier, you can use a calendar or a grid to plan meals for the week or the month. Some people really enjoy doing like a 4-week cycle where they come up with 4 weeks worth of menus and then they swap it at the end of the 4 weeks. I have also talked to people that um, will have like like a like multiple 4-week menus that they can cycle through, or some that are like for different seasons. The other thing that you can do is, even if you're just doing it on a week by week basis, I really encourage you to keep your used plans. It really makes planning easier if you have a busy week and you don't have time to sit down and do a full plan. You can just grab one that you've done previously, but like, 6 months ago or whatever. The other thing that I would encourage you guys to do, so somebody said that her plans change and then everything goes to pot. And I would encourage you to start with just a couple of meals and not lay it out on like a day by day, this is what we have to have on this day. Right. So instead, and I have done it this way before during busy points in my life, just have like a bulleted list on the refrigerator of the 3 different meals that are possible to cook if you have time to cook, and like an estimate of the amount of time that it's going to take, and that allows you some more flexibility. Okay, we ended up going out with some friends this night. I didn't know that on Sunday when I was making the list, so instead of having that today, I'm going to shift that later in the week. That allows you to do that. um, The other thing is, for people who have tried menu planning in the past, and it hasn't worked, or it was hard to stick to, or if you've never done this before, don't start with a grid like this where you're trying to plan breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or like the one I showed earlier that had like breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, because that's just too big of a thing to learn how to do all at once. I would encourage you to start with dinner. And I would encourage you, if doing a full week's worth of dinners is difficult, to think about starting with 2 or 3 days of the week, and building from there, or even one day of the week, right? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here's where I'm really going to start talking about the picky eating. So we and this is not just true for those of us who have picky eaters at home. The same thing holds true. When I am choosing my meals, I want to start with at least one favorite or safe food per meal, right? So, for example, I've got my week laid out. I am going to grab one of these pastas. We're going to have pasta at least once in my week, right? Because I'm starting with those entrees. And then a different day of the week, say I want to throw something a little new at my kids, something that they haven't maybe tried before, or maybe I'm tweaking a recipe that they hadn't eaten before, then I want to make sure that the sides that go with that are things that they are familiar with and are going to eat, right? So I'm not going to serve them a new entree and a new vegetable and a new carb. I'm going to serve them a new entree with a familiar vegetable, a familiar carb, and a familiar fruit. And so what that does is it gives them something to eat, even if they're not willing to even taste the new thing that I have created. And then a lot of the things that we've been talking about in the comments are things to talk about. Is what you already have on hand, your schedule for the week, as much as you know it in advance. You also want to think about how long ingredients last. So one of the things that I learned when I became an independent adult and started grocery shopping for myself is like some vegetables last a lot longer in the fridge than others, right? So like green beans from the store, like you need to use them. Versus like broccoli, that can last most of the week. Cabbage, I could leave that in there for a month and it's still going to be good, right? So thinking about those things, how long ingredients are going to last. Am I going to purchase fresh chicken and I need to use it in the next couple days, or am I going to get frozen chicken breasts and then I need to remember to put it in the fridge to defrost the night before? Oh man, this awesome comments here. Yeah, so a magnetic planner for all 3 meals. It allows you, it helps because when the kids ask what, and the kids and the partners know, right? So that is a huge thing that I've got on one of my slides later, is be sure to post the meal plan somewhere where everybody can see it. And that way the other people in your household can help start prepping things. That way people know what's there and what's available and what's going on, which can lead to less questions, just like Kirsten was saying. All right, next page, please. Okay, so we want to start from our favorite food or our go-to meal, and then we want to add things on. We want to add what we need to make it a balanced meal that's going to support us, that's going to support our growth and development. So my 5-year-old, his absolute favorite food is pesto pasta. And so what could we add to that pesto pasta dish to help it fit the My Plate way of doing things? Chicken. Yep, grilled chicken would be a really easy protein to put on the side if I'm really crammed for time. Maybe previous me has grilled some chicken and put it in the freezer and I just have to defrost it in the microwave or reheat it in a pan on the stove or the oven. Swap the noodles to whole grain noodles. Okay. Kirsten, you say 8 minutes. Do we go past one? I only see like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's correct. It's just one. It was
Yeah,
8 minutes
okay.
when I typed it, and then just
Yeah.
didn't send it.
Okay. Swap the noodles to whole grain noodles. Yeah, that can be a great option if your kids are willing to eat them. They also make like white noodles with added fiber, which can be a great option, or added protein, which can be a way to try to get those in there. A boiled egg can be a good option. One of the things that might work for some kids, but not for others, canned chickpeas mixed into this pasta. You could mix in some Sliced cherry tomatoes, finely chopped pine nuts into it. Yeah, so adding some more nuts. Pine nuts are super expensive. They're cheaper at Costco. That's the cheapest place I've been able to find them. Walnuts also go pretty well with pesto and are usually much less expensive. All right. Yeah, great, great option. Yeah, protein shakes. Yeah, we could add on a dessert that offers some of this, right? Like we could do a protein shake with frozen bananas in it to provide the creaminess. And that could be our dessert. And we'd be getting our fruit, potentially our dairy, potentially our protein, depending on what we put in it. And we would only have to add a vegetable to this plate. So that kind of gives you an idea of like how to move forward from your favorite or your go-to foods to then creating kind of a full meal. Let's go to the next page. Oh yeah, if you make the pesto at home, you can add in things like zucchini or spinach or arugula. Um, so the next slide is about using leftovers to save time and money. I encourage you guys to think about how you can make leftovers work for you and be realistic, right? Like if you're somebody who is like never ever going to bring a lunch from home, the single size portion for lunches isn't going to work well for you. Or if you're somebody who's like sick of something the next day, like you don't want to have that single size portion fresh, you want to freeze it for later and then you can pull it out, next week when you're not sick of that thing. Cook once, eat twice is something that I really like to think about. If bell peppers are on sale, I'll try to think about 2 or 3 menu options that would use those bell peppers, right? I've given you an example here that shows how you can use them in different cuisines and different types of dishes to make sure that you still have that variety. And then again, I talked about, just making sure that we label our food, our leftovers with dates, and that we reheat them to 165 degrees Fahrenheit to maintain that food safety. Oh, and defrost. Please don't defrost things on the counter. Please defrost them in the fridge, in the microwave, or in cold water. Next page, please. Cold water for things that are packaged and contained. Okay, so the final step is to create a grocery list. So this is probably something that you already do. When we start from the meal plan, I would encourage you to list all of the ingredients that you would need and the amounts, and then kind of cross off or check off the ones that you already have on hand, just to make sure that like, not only do I have walnuts on hand, but I have the cup of walnuts that I need to make the pesto, right? Remove items, yep. And then we will also want to think about, especially if we're not meal planning all of our meals or for the entire week, we want to make sure that we're adding in staples, things that, we can fill in the rest of some of our meals with. And then I really encourage you to organize by sections of the grocery store. Next slide, please. All right, so one of my biggest tips for success is to get the entire family involved in the meal planning process. And like we were talking about earlier, posting your meal plan, right? So everybody's involved in picking which foods go into the meal plan. That can really help with pickiness. It can help with buy-in from family members, whether they're children or partners. And then posting it really allows you to have partners or older children help with get the prep or the cooking started on a day when you're not, they're home early or whatever. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is some ideas of things like, okay, meal planning with my kids. What does that actually look like? Obviously, it's going to need to look different for different ages. And so here is a list of age-appropriate meal planning options. It comes from the Create Family Meals Cookbook, which is a really great course taught by USU Extension by the Create Better Health team. But for example, my toddlers could definitely look at a printed store advertisement and circle foods, or they could select things on my app because they're better at that than writing. If I am cutting out paper coupons, that's great scissors practice. And I can also ask them, you know, what's one meal you want to eat this week, or two meals, and then we can pencil those in, right? We can also ask them two good choice questions, right? Like, okay, we're having chicken nuggets on Thursday. Do you want to have corn or peas with that? Do you want to have cauliflower or broccoli with that? That can help engage them without, you know, forcing them to make all the choices and potentially make not the choices that we want to make. Ages 6 to 10, they can start by helping to make that initial list. And then, you know, as our kids get older, they can actually be put in charge of the menu planning to a greater or lesser extent, depending on their interest level and your capacity to kind of support them and teach them how to do that at the time. All right, next slide, please. All right. I'm going to have to let you guys review this one on your own. One more slide, please. Because we are at time. Okay. So one last thing really quick. Don't give up on your picky eaters. Keep offering the new foods. So this is my 2-year-old happily eating. I think she ate like at least a half a cup of guacamole at that meal. We eat a ton of avocados in my family because they're a favorite food for the rest of us, and she had never accepted them before this point, right? So for a year and a half, ever since we started weaning, I have been offering avocados, and she finally ate some. This is last week. So do not give up. And it really does take time for kids to get used to and interested in trying new foods. Last slide, please. Okay, so in extension, I do need to report about how well I'm doing, and we always are open to advice about how to improve. So I put a bunch of helpful links to different articles and resources in the slides, and if you do the survey, you'll get a link to download the slides at the end of the survey. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes if people have follow-up questions. And I've also included my phone number and email there if you would like to follow up
Awesome.
after the fact.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We also are going to be partnering with USU Extension and offering a nutrition course. It will be several weeks in length, but if this information interested you, I highly encourage you to keep a lookout in your weekly lineups for that sign up information. But we really appreciate your time, Carrie. I too will stay on for a couple more minutes. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask Carrie, and please don't forget to follow that link and do that survey for her. I think you're muted, Carrie.
There's a QR code too on the next slide if people want to snap a picture of that or scan that quick.
Oh, I don't see a QR
up.
code.
Okay, just the link in the chat then. Sorry about that.
No stress. Brittany asked, any tips on how to get toddlers to eat some meat other than beef jerky?
Oh my goodness, Brittany. Really great question. It's one that I am struggling with right now, actually. One of the things that I have been doing, honestly, is doing blended soups. It's not some place that I want to stay forever, right? Because I want them to get used to other textures. But they're definitely willing to eat tomato soup. And so we're doing other vegetable soups. And so putting in some meat and blending it can be a way to do that. The other thing that I've been a couple other ideas to throw at you. I'd love to do an entire talk just about picky eating, but some other things that have been really successful for me and are stated over and over again in the literature are trying to find ways to make food fun. So think like dinosaur chicken nuggets on, a pile of mashed potatoes and gravy, and they're going to go swimming in the gravy. We could think about also getting the kids involved in the cooking has been a really great way in my family to increase their willingness to try things. So we've been doing that recently, or that's just happened recently a couple times with legumes, like and you know, my 5-year-old usually would be like, I don't want that, but he helped make the lentil soup last night and he ate an entire bowl of it, right? Or my toddler helped smash up the black beans into refried beans and she tried several bites, and usually she wouldn't try them at all. So I think doing similar types of things, especially if you have maybe you know, meat that's not a food safety concern, you know, maybe already pre-prepped. Yep, how to add protein. There are other ways also of getting that protein and those nutrients from meat. Bone broth, protein powder, lentils, chickpeas. One of my favorite is to do red lentils, a bag of them just cooked plain, and then you blend that into tomato, like plain tomato sauce. And it's basically, you can't even tell that it's there. Other people have other answers or ideas that they want to share, or other questions?
No, I will say though, when I do my protein powder, in order to make sure it's kid safe, I just follow the obstetrics guidelines. So the American Academy of Obstetrics has guideline for protein powders for pregnant women. I just follow that for my kiddos.
All right. Another thing that I like to do to get in more protein is to actually use nuts as nut flour, so like when I make pancakes, I'll use some almond flour or I'll use some chickpea flour. You know, typically I won't go all in on a flour like that, but adding some of it will add protein without changing the texture too much.
All right, well, we will let you guys get back to your day. This is recorded and we will throw it up on our website. So if it's something you want to revisit, you can absolutely do so. And like Carrie said, if you fill out that survey, you'll have access to all the slides. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next month.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That was wonderful.
Thanks for having me, Kirsten, and thanks for all your great ideas in the chat.
Of course, we appreciate it. All right, well, we will talk to you guys later.